Imagine opening a book, right? And the very first thing the author tells you is basically a warning.
Yeah, setting the tone immediately.
Exactly. They write, this is not a notebook. It is the texture of phrases, letters, sounds.
Which is such a wild way to start.
Right. So today, we are doing a deep dive into this raw kind of stream of consciousness manifesto that was originally written in Spanish.
And, it completely defies the category of a standard text. I mean, it reads less like an academic argument and a lot more like an intellectual unburdening.
Yeah, unburdening is a great word for it.
It's like this attempt to articulate the invisible architecture of our daily lives.
Which is incredibly relevant for anyone listening right now because at its core, this text explores that intense underlying modern anxiety we all kind of feel.
Absolutely.
That constant friction between the technology we use every day, the illusions our society sells us, and, well, the ancient mythologies that still secretly dictate how we behave.
Yeah, it covers a ton of ground.
It really does. So I've brought you in to help us navigate these deep philosophical waters. Because the author starts by diagnosing our current reality with a phrase that, it genuinely stopped me in my tracks.
The clash.
Yes, they claim that humanity is currently being torn apart by the clash between digital time and biological time.
Right. And what's fascinating here is how they define those two things. Because biological time is something we are all, intimately familiar with, even if we don't actively put a label on it.
Like our physical bodies.
Exactly. It is the inescapable reality of human limits. So, our circadian rhythms, the biological necessity for like 8 hours of sleep, the reality of physical aging.
It's the natural, unavoidable pacing of a human life. It's everything you absolutely cannot negotiate with.
Right.
You get tired, you get hungry, your joints hurt if you sit in a chair too long.
Yeah, your biology sets the rules. But then on the other side of that collision, you have digital time. And digital time operates on an entirely different physical plane.
It doesn't care about your joints.
No, it doesn't. It is instantaneous. It's relentless. It operates 24/7. And for all practical purposes, it is immortal.
Wow, immortal. Yeah.
I mean, the internet does not need to sleep. Algorithms don't get fatigue. And the author's primary diagnosis is that we are actively trying to force our fragile biological bodies to keep pace with a digital environment that just possesses zero physical constraints.
Which is impossible.
Right. And that friction, that widening gap between what our bodies can do and what our digital tools demand is the tearing apart they are talking about.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the physical sensation of modern burnout is something we all know. Like, you, listener, you've definitely felt this.
Definitely.
So is living in biological time while being strapped to digital time kind of like, well, is it like running on a treadmill where the machine dictates the speed rather than your legs?
That is a perfect way to look at it.
Like, you set it to a sprint, your
Yeah.
legs start giving out, but the belt doesn't care, it just keeps ripping backward, and you're frantically slapping your feet down trying not to faceplant.
Yeah, that treadmill analogy gets right to the heart of it, especially the mechanical indifference of the machine. The treadmill doesn't know you're tired.
It literally cannot know.
Right, and the text highlights this massive disparity by pointing to the extremes of our physical reality. The author draws this incredibly stark visual contrast for us.
With the coins.
Right. Yeah. On one hand, you have people in the actual streets physically stretching out their hands for a coin.
Which is, it is the most visceral, ancient image of biological vulnerability. Just raw physical need.
Exactly. And then on the absolute other end of the spectrum, the author brings up the tech monoliths.
Oh, this part was wild.
Yeah, they say Google pays, and they use a massive, clearly hyperbolic figure here, something like $9,000 billion a month for servers, platforms, and AI.
$9,000 billion.
Right. Obviously, that specific number is a rhetorical exaggeration by the author, but the sheer scale of the contrast is jarring.
It's meant to shock you.
It is. The hyperbole serves a very specific literary purpose. It forces the reader to juxtapose the tiny, tangible reality of a single physical coin with a sum of money that is so vast, so heavily digitized, that it basically becomes utterly abstract.
It becomes meaningless to the human mind.
Exactly. The system is pouring functionally infinite resources, like electricity, water for cooling, billions in capital into maintaining the digital realm, expanding the servers, training the artificial intelligence.
While actual humans are on the pavement.
Meanwhile, the biological realm, the person standing on the pavement is left to starve.
It's a brutal image.
Yeah.
But then the author goes a step further. They state that the ultimate goal of all these server farms, all this AI, all this infrastructure, they say the only objective is singularly to govern.
To govern.
It's
Yeah.
to govern us. Now, I have a hard time buying that a server farm's quote-unquote goal is to govern me.
Sure, it sounds extreme.
It sounds a bit like, a
Yeah,
late-night
yeah.
internet conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
A machine doesn't have malice. Aren't we just lazy?
How do you mean?
Like, aren't we willingly handing over our autonomy because convenience is just easier than making decisions? I let the algorithm pick the movie so I don't have to scroll for an hour.
It's tempting to brush it off as a conspiracy, yeah. But the author isn't really suggesting a shadowy cabal of executives rubbing their hands together in a boardroom.
Okay.
They are pointing to the mechanics of the system itself. Whether it is a conscious, malicious design to govern, or simply the inevitable outcome of relying on systems that mathematically outpace us, the result is exactly identical.
We still surrender our decision-making.
Right. We let the algorithm dictate our media consumption, map out our schedules, curate our social interactions,
Because we have to.
because biological time simply does not afford us the bandwidth to process the sheer volume of digital information. It is governance by default.
Oh, wow. Governance by default.
The system governs you because you physically cannot process the world without it.
Okay, so if these societal structures are governing us by default, how do they actually pull it off? It's clearly not with an iron fist or like an authoritarian decree. We don't see armed guards making us scroll.
No. The control is much more subtle. The text suggests they govern us by taking our most cherished universal ideals and twisting them into heavy burdens.
Right. The great reversal.
The author executes a brilliant rhythmic takedown of modern societal promises here. It is essentially a massive bait and switch.
Yeah.
Society tells the individual to declare what they want. And we, as a society, universally say we want equality, we want freedom, we want money, answers, and understanding.
But the author reveals the trick. When we ask for equality, we don't actually get equality. We get something that needs to be equalized.
Exactly.
We are handed a constant, perpetual state of deficit that we are now responsible for fixing.
Which perfectly explains the modern sense of endless obligation. The system doesn't provide solutions, it manufactures tasks. When you demand freedom, the system doesn't make you free. Instead, it places the demand on you that you must go out and free things.
It turns the concept of freedom into a labor.
A literal job, an ongoing project you have to constantly work at to maintain.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because you can map this directly onto the apps on our phones right now. Think about it.
Oh, completely.
Let's look at the other ideals on the author's list. We ask for money, but we get a kind of modern poverty that demands our money. Endless subscriptions, hidden fees, the rising cost of just existing.
A subscription model of life.
Exactly. We ask for answers, but we get an avalanche of new questions awaiting our answers. We ask for understanding, and we get things we are forced to explain.
That last one is huge.
Like, think about downloading a personal finance app or a health tracker. You download it to gain understanding, right?
It's a classic modern trap. You want the app to give you understanding. You want it to do the work.
Right. You want a simple dashboard that says, you are healthy, or you have enough money. But instead of understanding, the app gives you a massive pile of raw data.
Just charts and graphs.
Yeah. Suddenly you have to categorize 40 different microtransactions, label your coffee purchases, or log your caloric intake.
You're doing data entry.
Exactly. You now have to sit down and explain the data to the app, and then explain it to yourself. You basically became the unpaid data analyst for the tool that promised to do the analysis for you.
It's wild when you put it like that.
Are we basically being tricked into being the engine for a machine that promised it was going to carry us?
The author's argument points to a resounding yes. Every solution offered by the modern digital structure is fundamentally a mirror reflecting the labor back onto the individual.
It's all on us.
The system says, here is a platform for your freedom of speech, but maintaining your presence on that platform, feeding the algorithm, defending your points, optimizing your content, it just becomes a second job.
That is exactly how governance operates in this framework.
Right. If you keep the population endlessly busy trying to equalize the unequal, trying to answer the endless prompts, trying to explain the unexplainable data of our own lives, they are completely managed.
They have no time left to rebel.
None. They are too busy doing the system's homework.
Man, it's exhausting just thinking about the sheer volume of busy work we've accepted as normal.
It really is.
And this heavy, continuous burden placed on the individual leads the author to look backward, deep into our history. Like, why are we so incredibly used to bearing the weight of the world?
Why do we volunteer for it?
Exactly. Why do we just blindly accept that we have to constantly labor for these broken promises? The author traces this instinct back to our historical and cultural foundations, specifically the myth of the sacrificial martyr.
This is where the text shifts focus quite dramatically. It argues that human empires, the entire structure of Western civilization, really have been built on the foundation of letting a single person suffer or die for the benefit of all humanity.
And the text does this incredibly radical reimagining of historical and religious figures.
Very radical.
And just be clear for everyone listening, we're looking at this strictly as a textual analysis of the author's philosophical argument today. We're not endorsing or condemning any specific religious viewpoint.
Of course. We're just tracing the author's thought process.
Right. But the author goes right down the line of these foundational archetypes. They say Noah should have just said he didn't feel like building the ark.
Moses should have refused to go up the mountain.
Christ should have refused the crucifixion. And the desert walkers should have just stayed home.
It's a very blunt rejection. Psychologically, the author's diagnosing a foundational flaw in how we view personal responsibility.
The chosen one narrative.
Exactly. For millennia, the cultural narrative has been that salvation requires ultimate sacrifice from a singular figure, and that the rest of us get to build our empires on top of that person's sacrifice.
We rely on the martyrs.
We do, and by suggesting these monumental, paradigm-shifting figures should have simply said no, the author is begging the reader to stop expecting saviors to fix the system.
Stop waiting for someone else to carry the load.
Right, and also stop volunteering to be that savior yourself.
So what does this actually mean for a person going to work on a Tuesday? Because the author makes this rejection deeply personal at this point.
They do.
They write, I am not going to die to be reborn guilty of what I didn't do, to die again for the world. They are flat out refusing to participate in this cycle of martyrdom.
It's a powerful line.
It is.
Yeah.
But does this mean modern people suffer from a kind of martyr complex wrapped up in our own egos?
Oh, the author explicitly calls out our modern vanities in this exact context. They mention how we love to see ourselves today as chosen creators and illuminated academics.
We definitely do.
We have entirely internalized this martyr foundation, but we've dressed it up in 21st century clothing.
Like hustle culture.
Exactly. We think our endless labor, our 70-hour work weeks, our constant digital output, we think it's somehow a noble sacrifice for the greater good of society or our industry.
Are we sacrificing ourselves to the digital grind, thinking we are saving the world, when really we should just be like the desert walkers and stay home?
That's the question they're asking.
Because you see people constantly burning themselves out, trying to be the ultimate creator or the thought leader or the illuminated academic.
The main character of the internet.
Yes, they genuinely believe they are carrying the weight of the digital discourse on their shoulders. Like if they stop posting, the world stops spinning.
But the tragic irony the author points out is that you are burning yourself out to maintain a system that only wants to govern you.
It doesn't actually care about you.
No, it doesn't. You are doing it because deep down, human beings have been culturally conditioned to believe that suffering for the world is the highest possible calling.
The ultimate virtue.
Right. So the author's refusal saying, I will not die for this, is actually a radical reclaiming of biological time.
Circling back to biological time.
It's refusal to let the ego trick the physical body into sacrificing itself for a digital empire that won't even remember your name.
Which brings us to a really uncomfortable question. If we can't rely on the tech monoliths because they just want to govern us,
right,
and we shouldn't rely on historical martyrs or our own self-sacrifice, what about human intellect?
The last bastion.
Can science, logic, and academia save us? And the author's conclusion here is a resounding no.
Yeah, the text turns its critique toward what it sees as the massive intellectual stagnation of our time. The author claims that science has already done its part.
Done its part.
It has achieved what it can achieve. Now, according to the author, just time passes.
Science has done its part, and now time just passes. I mean, that is a beautifully bleak view of human progress.
It is bleak, but it speaks to the ultimate tragedy of being disconnected from biological time.
How so?
Well, when you are running on that treadmill you described earlier, constantly trying to match the speed of the digital world, you lose the ability to actually experience the present moment.
You're just trying to keep up.
Exactly. Academia and science, according to this text, have become entirely disconnected from the visceral, beating heart of human life. They operate strictly in the abstract.
And the author describes academics as being trapped in a completely useless loop.
A very poetic loop.
Yeah, they say academics are busy remembering what they haven't lived, listening to what no one has said, and forecasting what has already happened.
That phrase is incredible. It forces us to question the entire nature of our modern intellectual pursuits.
Have we basically just built a massive, incredibly well-funded echo chamber?
Essentially, yes. When the author says we are remembering what we haven't lived, they are talking about the sheer abstraction of modern knowledge.
The data over the reality.
Right. We have so much data, so many complex models and computer simulations that we confuse studying the data with actually experiencing the reality.
It's like spending your entire vacation staring at a highly detailed topographical map of the mountains.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Like tracing the elevation lines with your finger, looking at all the little icons instead of just looking out the window at the actual mountains.
Yeah.
You possess all the information in the world, but your physical body is completely stagnant in a hotel room.
That captures it perfectly. And that final critique, forecasting what has already happened, that is the illusion of modern progress in a nutshell.
We think we're looking forward.
But we aren't. We use incredible computational power and vast academic resources to analyze trends, only to spit out conclusions that are already blatantly obvious to anyone actually living in biological time.
We're predicting yesterday's weather.
Exactly. The intellect has become a rear-view mirror that we are desperately pretending is a crystal ball.
That is the grand irony of the information age that the author is exposing here.
We have everything, yet we're going nowhere.
We have access to every piece of information in human history. The digital time is moving infinitely fast, and yet intellectually we are totally stagnant. We are just forecasting the past,
We're sitting around waiting to answer questions that don't even matter.
trying to equalize inequalities that the system created on purpose, just to keep us busy.
And the actual cost of that busy work is paid in biological time.
Your real life.
Yes. The tragedy the author is trying to wake us up to is that while we are busy playing the eliminated academic or the digital martyr or, the unpaid data analyst for our own lives,
Our actual physical lives, the only thing that truly belongs to us, are quietly slipping away. Man, it is an incredibly heavy, complex piece of writing, but it names a feeling I think so many of us walk around with every single day.
it gives a vocabulary to the exhaustion.
It really does. Let's take a step back and look at the whole journey of this deep dive. We started with this fundamental tearing apart of our reality, the exhausting physical and mental clash between our fragile biological limits and the limitless, relentless speed of digital time.
And then we examine the mechanics of how we are governed by all of this, not by force, but by a system that takes our deepest desires, like freedom, equality, understanding.
And flips them into endless burdens and unfinishable tasks.
Exactly.
We looked at the radical rejection of the martyr complex, challenging this deeply ingrained idea that we have to sacrifice ourselves for an empire or a digital platform.
The author makes a compelling case that sometimes the bravest, most revolutionary thing you can do is just say no and stay home.
Just opt out. And finally, we confronted the idea that our intellectual institutions might just be spinning their wheels in the mud, forecasting a past we've already lived, instead of engaging with the present moment.
It is a profound unmasking of the illusions we rely on to make sense of the modern world.
It really is. Now, I want to bring you, the listener, back to the very first question the author posed at the beginning of this text. They asked, if someone really wanted to see who we were, where would they have to look?
A great question.
And after unpacking all of this, it's abundantly clear that the answer isn't in our technology, it's not in our historical myths, and it's certainly not in our academic forecasts.
No, the answer can only be found in the biological reality of who we are, totally stripped of all those digital and intellectual illusions.
So I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over as you go about your day.
Go for it.
If the digital world fundamentally only wants to govern us by keeping us busy, and our historical myths demand that we endlessly sacrifice ourselves for the system, what would happen if, just for tomorrow, you chose to live entirely in biological time?
Wow.
What if you stopped trying to answer the unanswerable questions the system throws at you and just let yourself exist without having to explain your existence to an app, an algorithm, or an illuminated academic? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.